Welcome back. Today, we are diving straight into an absolutely wild, highly relatable explainer. We're unpacking the sheer, chaotic reality of student life. And no, we aren't looking at some boring academic study. We're decoding the raw, unfiltered genius of Ricoh animations. You know the ones, those incredibly simple Stickman animations that somehow capture the modern student experience with just stunning, pinpoint accuracy. We're talking the endless dopamine loops of screen time, the absolute terror of authority figures, and that overwhelming everyday confusion of just trying to exist during the school year.
Okay, let's dive into this immediately with a quote straight from the source. Heat, please stop me. I mean, wow. Right away, you are hit with this overwhelming wall of panic. This isn't a measured, rational thought, right? This is the frantic, completely absurd internal monologue of a student whose brain is literally short-circuiting. It perfectly sets the tone for everything we're exploring today, an environment where the pressure is so intense, our little Stickman student is literally begging for an end to the madness.
Let's start by looking at the very foundation of this crisis. Section 1. Balancing home and school. The existential dread.
Am I? Just 3 words. But honestly, has any phrase ever captured that morning brain fog of a student better? You wake up, the alarm is blaring, you've got an essay due, chores waiting at home, and a massive test first period. The cognitive overload is so immediate and so absolute that the brain can't even finish a basic existential question. It's not who am I or where am I? Nope, it's just a profound blank state of total confusion. You're just suspended in a permanent state of,
Which brings us to what's actually happening inside that Stickman's head. The true division of labor in the student experience shows that a measly 10% of the brain is processing the actual homework or chores. The other 90%? It's entirely consumed by that, am I? Confusion. We try our best to balance our lives, but the reality is the sheer volume of expectations just leaves us completely paralyzed. It directly translates that existential dread Ricoh animation so perfectly satirizes right into visual data.
So what do we do when we're drowning in that 90% confusion? Well, we look for an escape. Section 2. The phone addiction trap. The endless scroll.
Listen to the pacing of this quote, because it tells a complete, tragic story in just a handful of words. Okay, this is going to be okay. That is the student sitting down at their desk making a firm promise to themselves. They are going to focus. Here you go. They open the book. Or, maybe they just pick up the phone to check one single notification. And then the sudden hypnotic drop. Wow. All that good intention just vanishes. The screen lights up, the dopamine hits, and the trance completely takes over.
This right here is the ultimate universal struggle of the digital age. The expectation is complete control. You tell yourself, okay, this is going to be okay. I'm just checking my messages for a split second. But the reality? It's the screen's irresistible pull. That here you go, wow, is the exact moment of surrender. It's when the bright colors, the memes, and the endless scroll completely hijack the brain's reward system. The homework? Yeah, entirely forgotten on the desk.
Watching this build over time reveals a chronological trap pulled straight from the source material. At 0 seconds, you have pure resolve. Okay, a few minutes in, you're bargaining with yourself, really trying to maintain that focus. This is going to be okay. But fast forward hours later, you are deep into the digital abyss, staring blankly at a screen at 2 a.m., completely lost in the here you go wow. It's a rapid comedic descent into screen time oblivion. And let's be real, every single student has been there.
But eventually you do have to put the phone down and actually go to class. And that introduces our final and honestly most chaotic sequence, Section 3, the menacing teacher, authority-induced panic.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer level of desperation. When faced with the ever-present menacing teacher, the student's internal monologue just breaks down completely. Please stop this. Please stop me. It's not just a plea for the teacher to stop. The student is literally begging for an intervention against their own spiraling panic. It's that exact feeling of being called on in class when you haven't done the reading and your anxiety is snowballing so fast you just want someone to hit the pause button on reality itself.
And then the physical symptoms kick in. The manic repetition of heat, 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 heat has absolutely nothing to do with the temperature of the classroom. This is a perfect simulation of the physiological response to sheer fear. It's the flushing of the cheeks, the sudden sweat, the racing heartbeat. By just repeating the word heat, the animation masterfully conveys the overwhelming sensory overload of a terrified stickman trapped under the gaze of a strict authority figure.
And then we reach the climax. After the panic, after the heat, the brain simply snaps. I love, yes. It is an abrupt, entirely absurd shift. When the pressure from the menacing teacher becomes just too much to bear, the student defaults to extreme panicked compliance. It's almost like this comedic trauma response or a weird academic Stockholm syndrome. The student is so terrified they just start aggressively agreeing and professing love for the situation, literally just to survive the interaction.
Which brings us to the antagonist of our story. As defined here, the menacing teacher isn't even necessarily doing anything overt. They are just an ever-present, unstoppable force of nature. And what's brilliant about Rico animations is that we don't even need to see the teacher's actions. The terrifying presence is built entirely through the panicked, repetitive, nonsensical words of the victimized student. The authority figure's power is measured 100% by the student's absolute meltdown.
So how do we bring all of these frantic, fragmented snippets together? Let's move to our final section, making sense of the chaos, the student experience.
So the crucial point is that Rico Animations has actually constructed a perfectly accurate three-part narrative of modern education. First, you've got the constant existential confusion of balancing life and school, the am I? Second, you have the coping mechanism, that instant digital distraction of phone addiction, the wow. And finally, you have the unavoidable consequence, the overwhelming authority panic when you face your responsibilities, the heat. These three pillars perfectly summarize the hilarious daily struggle of simply trying to survive the school week.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply important question to consider today. If our daily student life is just an endless cycle of am I, and please stop, how do we ever break out of it? How do we finally put down the phone, find our focus, and beat the heat of the menacing teacher? It's definitely something to think about the next time you sit down to study and catch yourself whispering, "Here you go." Wow. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.